The palace gates opened with a heavy clang, and the sound of panicked roars echoed through the corridors. No one could calm the emperor's dragon. Once a symbol of pride and power, the dragon had turned wild. Its scales were dull, and one of its massive wings hung slightly crooked. Trainers, warriors, and even the palace's most trusted handlers had tried to approach it. All had failed. Some ran screaming, others were thrown against walls. No one lasted more than an hour. Jason, a veteran and single father, walked calmly into the palace courtyard. He carried no fancy equipment or magical charms, only a small satchel with simple food and water. He had heard of the emperor's broken dragon, but he wasn't seeking glory. His daughter, little Mia, had often told him stories about dragons from her books. He had always believed that understanding someone or something came from patience, not fear. That belief had helped him survive battles and raise his daughter alone. The palace guards eyed him suspiciously. "This is no place for a civilian," one of them warned, his hand hovering near his sword. "No trainer has lasted an hour. You will fail." Jason only nodded politely. "I'm not here to fight," he said softly. "I just want to see." The dragon lay in the center of the courtyard, its enormous body coiled like a living mountain. Its eyes were sharp, filled with pain and suspicion. Every muscle twitched with tension. The dragon had been abandoned and mistreated after an attack left it injured. It remembered fear and betrayal, and now it trusted no one. Even the emperor had stopped trying to calm it, leaving it caged and angry. Jason sat down on a bench at the edge of the courtyard. He did not shout, wave his hands, or try to assert control. He simply watched. Days passed, and each trainer who attempted to approach the dragon failed spectacularly. Some screamed and ran. Others tried harsh commands, waving whips and sticks. Each failure made the dragon more wary, more aggressive. But Jason noticed small details the others missed. The dragon flinched at sudden movements, but when no one was near, it stretched its wings slowly, testing its strength. It had moments of calm between the bursts of rage. Jason began to leave small pieces of food near the dragon's cage, keeping his distance. He moved slowly, speaking softly in a voice that did not command but comforted. The dragon watched him cautiously, tilting its head and flicking its tongue. No fire, no claws, no violence yet, just observation. Other palace staff whispered behind their hands. "He will not last," they said. "It is impossible." Jason only smiled faintly. He understood that trust was not earned in minutes or even hours. It took time and patience. Each day he spent longer in the courtyard. He learned the dragon's patterns, when it stretched, when it slept, and when it became restless. He noticed that its aggression came not from cruelty but from fear. Every trainer had rushed at it, shouting orders. They had ignored the dragon's injuries and scars, both old and new. Jason realized the dragon was broken, yes, but not in body alone. It was broken in spirit. One afternoon, as a thunderstorm rolled across the sky, the dragon roared violently at a group of panicked servants. They scattered, leaving Jason standing calmly in the courtyard. Lightning struck nearby, and the dragon's eyes widened in terror. He did not move closer, nor did he speak loudly. Instead, he crouched slightly, keeping his gaze soft, and slowly extended a hand with a small piece of meat. The dragon froze, eyes locked on him, nostrils flaring. Moments passed. Then, with a slow, trembling movement, it sniffed the food without attacking. Jason gave a quiet sigh of relief. It was the first small victory. The emperor watched from his balcony, intrigued despite his pride. "Who is this man?" he asked his advisor. "Why is he not afraid?" The advisor shrugged. "I do not know, Your Majesty. He does not have a reputation as a trainer. Perhaps he will fail like the others." But the emperor's sharp eyes noticed the dragon's subtle change in posture. It was not flaring its wings or hissing as fiercely as before. Something about the man's calmness seemed to reach the creature. Days turned into a week. Jason stayed longer each day, talking softly, moving slowly, and leaving small amounts of food. He began to understand the dragon's moods. When it flinched or growled, he stepped back. When it relaxed, he stepped forward. Trust was growing in tiny, almost invisible ways. He noticed the dragon's eyes would follow him with less suspicion, and it sometimes let him approach a few steps closer than before. The palace staff watched in awe, though they remained skeptical. Jason also noticed how much the dragon remembered every slight, every harsh word, and every threat. It had learned that humans were unpredictable, often dangerous. But Jason was different. He had no ambition here, no desire to impress. He only wanted to connect, to understand. His military training had taught him patience, observation, and timing. His experience as a father had taught him empathy and compassion. These lessons, he realized, were more powerful than any whip or command. By the end of the week, the dragon had changed subtly. It no longer lunged at every shadow or hissed at every movement. It allowed Jason to sit closer, even laying its massive head near him without striking. It was not tamed yet, it was still wild, wary and strong, but the first wall had been broken. Jason had done what no other trainer could do. He had reached the dragon's mind before its anger, and he had done so with patience, not force. Jason stood, brushing dust off his pants, and looked at the dragon. "We have a long road ahead," he said softly. The dragon blinked slowly, almost as if it understood. No one else had come close to this. The Emperor, watching silently from above, felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, this single dad could succeed where all others had failed. And for the first time, the palace felt a fragile sense of peace in the presence of a creature once called impossible. Jason returned to the courtyard early the next morning. The palace was quiet, but the dragon was awake, stretching its enormous wings and letting out a low, rumbling growl. It watched him, eyes sharp and wary. Other trainers had tried to force their presence on the creature, shouting commands or swinging whips. Jason knew that fear and aggression only made the dragon worse. He carried nothing but a small satchel of food and a soft voice. Today he would take another careful step. He sat down a few meters away, far enough to be safe but close enough to be seen. He didn't make sudden movements or try to get the dragon's attention with gestures. He just waited, letting the dragon notice him on its own terms. The creature's nostrils flared, its tail flicked nervously, but it did not move away. Jason spoke softly, words meant not to command but to comfort. "It's okay," he said. "You don't have to be afraid of me." His voice was calm, steady, and without fear. Days passed, and Jason repeated this simple routine. He placed small pieces of meat near the dragon, always from a safe distance, and never forced contact. At first, the dragon watched warily, hissing if anyone came too close. But gradually, it began to approach the food on its own. Jason noticed small signs of trust. Its head lowered slightly, its tail stopped thrashing, and its breathing slowed when he was near. Each little step mattered. He did not rush. He had learned patience in battle and as a father, and he applied it now. The palace staff began to take notice. They had watched trainers fail spectacularly, but Jason seemed different. He moved slowly, never raised his voice, and never showed fear. Some whispered doubts, while others began to hope. Even the Emperor watched, intrigued by this calm man who faced a dragon with no reputation, no special equipment, and no magic. Yet the dragon's behavior was slowly changing. It seemed curious about Jason rather than angry, testing his presence carefully. One afternoon, Jason tried something new. He picked up a stick and lightly traced a pattern in the dirt, drawing simple shapes. The dragon tilted its head, watching. He didn't touch the creature or make sudden moves. Instead, he spoke quietly, explaining what he was doing. It seemed strange to the palace staff, but Jason understood that dragons, like humans, respond to attention and care, not force. Slowly, the dragon edged closer, its massive claws making soft marks in the dirt. Jason offered a piece of meat, and this time the dragon took it from his hand. Just a little, but enough to signal a breakthrough. As the days turned into a week, Jason learned more about the dragon's fears. Loud noises made it flinch violently. Quick movements could trigger a tail swipe or a roar that shook the courtyard walls. He adjusted his approach, moving slowly, speaking gently, and allowing the dragon to lead the pace of their interactions. He learned the dragon had moments of calm and moments of panic, and he respected them all. This careful observation was key. He knew he could not rush, and he knew that trust could be lost in an instant if he made a mistake. One evening, a storm rolled in, dark clouds covering the sky. The wind howled and the dragon roared in fear. Servants ran for cover, shouting warnings. Jason stayed, crouching low, speaking softly, showing no fear. The dragon's eyes were wide, filled with terror. Lightning flashed, illuminating the scales of its scarred wings. Jason extended a hand, steady and calm, offering a piece of meat. The dragon froze. A tense moment passed. Slowly, carefully, it stepped closer, taking the food. Jason's heart beat fast, but he remained calm. It was a small act, but it marked another important step toward trust. The palace walls were filled with whispers. How does he do it? Some asked. Why does he not fear the dragon? Others were skeptical, fearing the dragon could turn at any moment. Jason ignored them all. He focused only on the creature before him, reading its body language and responding with care. He noticed its small gestures, ears twitching, tail flicking, eyes narrowing in suspicion or softening in curiosity. Each subtle sign guided his next move. He learned the dragon understood intention, not words. By the end of the second week, the dragon allowed Jason to sit closer than ever before. Its massive head rested on the ground near him while it studied his calm presence. No roar, no flailing wings, no hissing, just quiet observation. Jason spoke softly, explaining what he was doing, not commanding, not forcing. The palace staff watched in amazement, though fear still lingered. Other trainers had failed because they tried to dominate or scare the dragon. Jason succeeded because he respected it, understood it, and moved with patience and care. Jason realized that trust was not a single moment, it was built piece by piece, day by day. The dragon had not fully accepted him, but it was no longer wild in the way it had been. It had learned that this man posed no threat, that he would not harm it, and that his presence brought calm rather than fear. Jason's heart lifted. He understood that taming a creature like this was not about force, it was about connection, empathy, and patience. One quiet morning, the dragon approached him, its massive eyes watching with curiosity. Jason stayed still, letting it sniff the air near his hand. The dragon hesitated, then lowered its massive head, letting Jason gently touch its snout. It was a fragile moment, but it marked a turning point. The palace staff gasped quietly, and even the emperor leaned forward from his balcony, surprised and impressed. Jason smiled softly. "We're learning each other," he said quietly. The dragon blinked, unafraid for the first time in months. It was not yet tame, but it had begun to trust. And Jason knew that trust, once earned, could grow stronger than fear, stronger than anger, stronger than pain. The impossible pet was slowly becoming possible. In the days that followed, Jason continued his quiet work, never forcing, never rushing. The dragon began to follow him cautiously, allow gentle touches, and even respond to his soft words. The palace, once filled with fear and chaos, began to feel a fragile peace. For the first time, hope entered the emperor's mind. Perhaps this man, a veteran single dad with patience and heart, could succeed where all others had failed. And so, trust began to grow slowly but surely, in the heart of a dragon that no one thought could ever be tamed. Jason walked into the courtyard with the morning sun casting long shadows over the stone walls. The dragon lay coiled near the fountain, its massive head resting on its claws. Its eyes flicked toward him, curious but cautious. The creature had begun to trust him, but it was still unpredictable. One wrong move and chaos could erupt. Today Jason faced a new challenge, not from the dragon but from the palace itself. The emperor's advisors were growing impatient. They had watched Jason slowly gain the dragon's trust, but their fear and skepticism had not faded. "This is foolishness," one advisor snapped. "We cannot allow a civilian to handle the dragon. It is dangerous. It could kill him or destroy the courtyard." Another nodded. "We should remove him before it is too late. No one else has lasted an hour. Why should he be different?" Jason ignored them. He had learned long ago that people often doubted what they could not understand. He focused only on the dragon, speaking softly, his voice calm and steady. "We take it one step at a time," he said, more to himself than anyone else. He crouched near the fountain and placed a small dish of food down, keeping his distance. The dragon's eyes followed him carefully. It growled softly, testing his reaction. Jason stayed still. He did not flinch. He did not shout. He waited. Meanwhile, the palace guards were uneasy. They had been trained to fear the dragon, and they did not trust Jason's calm approach. Some whispered among themselves, others watched nervously from behind the courtyard walls. Rumors spread quickly. "The man is reckless," some said. "He will get himself killed." Others were curious. "Look at the dragon," they said. "It is calmer around him. Perhaps he is doing something the rest of us could not." As the day passed, Jason faced another challenge. A group of young trainees tried to impress the emperor by approaching the dragon themselves. They carried whips and shouted commands. The dragon flared its wings, hissed, and bared its teeth. Chaos erupted. Jason stepped forward calmly, holding up his hands but making no sudden movements. The dragon froze, its head turning toward him. Slowly it backed down, lowering its wings slightly. The trainees were terrified and ran away, stumbling over each other. Jason spoke softly to the dragon, his voice steady. The creature relaxed, allowing him to place food closer than ever before. The emperor watched from above, intrigued but cautious. "This man is different," he said quietly. "He does not seek glory. He does not fight the dragon. And yet, the dragon listens to him." His advisor scowled. "It is dangerous to encourage him. What if the creature turns on him? Jason knew he could not force trust. He had to earn it one careful step at a time. Each day he studied the dragon's behavior, noting the patterns in its mood and reactions. He discovered that loud noises and sudden movements caused panic, but quiet patience brought calm. He began to train the dragon using gentle gestures, slow movements, and careful observation. He learned when to step closer and when to step back, allowing the dragon to lead the interaction. One afternoon, a servant accidentally dropped a tray of silverware, clanging loudly against the stone floor. The dragon leapt to its feet, roaring in fear. Guards rushed forward, shouting orders, but Jason stayed still. He spoke softly, moving slowly toward the dragon. It growled, snapping its massive jaws, but it did not attack. Jason extended a hand with a piece of meat, his voice calm and reassuring. The dragon hesitated, then took it gently. The courtyard fell silent. Even the emperor's advisors were forced to watch in awe. Jason realized that the palace itself was a challenge. The dragon's fear was worsened by the constant noise, the shouting, and the staff's nervous energy. If he wanted the dragon to fully trust him, he would need to teach the palace to be calm as well. He spoke to the guards, explaining how to move quietly, how to avoid sudden gestures, and how to treat the dragon with respect. Slowly the staff began to follow his lead. The courtyard, once filled with tension and fear, grew quieter, calmer, and safer for everyone. As the weeks passed, Jason faced yet another challenge, his own doubts. There were moments when the dragon's wild strength intimidated him, when he wondered if he had misjudged the creature. But he reminded himself of his experiences as a father and a soldier. He had faced impossible odds before and survived. Patience and careful observation had always seen him through. He breathed deeply, squared his shoulders, and returned to the dragon with quiet determination. One evening Jason noticed something remarkable. The dragon, once quick to lash out at any movement, now allowed him to sit closer. Its massive head rested near his feet while it watched his every move. It even nudged his hand slightly, testing his reaction. Jason smiled faintly. "We're learning," he whispered. The palace staff peeked from behind walls, whispering in disbelief. Some were still fearful, but others were beginning to respect him. The emperor, observing from above, finally spoke aloud. "This man is teaching us more than we expected," he said. "Not only is the dragon learning, but so are we. Perhaps patience and understanding are more powerful than fear and force." Jason knew the challenges were not over. The dragon was not fully tamed, and palace politics were still a threat. Some advisors remained opposed to him, waiting for a mistake to happen. But he had already achieved what no one else had. He had brought calm to a creature that had seemed impossible to control. He had begun to earn its trust, step by careful step. That night, as the palace settled into quiet, Jason sat near the dragon, speaking softly. The creature's breathing was steady, its eyes focused but not hostile. He reached out slowly, letting the dragon sniff his hand. It did not flinch. It did not roar. It simply watched him, curious and cautious. For Jason, that small gesture meant more than words could say. Trust was growing even in a place filled with fear and doubt. The palace challenges were real, but Jason knew that with patience, respect, and steady courage, he could overcome them. The dragon, once a symbol of chaos and fear, was beginning to see him not as a threat, but as a friend. And that, Jason realized, was the greatest victory of all. The morning was quiet, almost too quiet. Jason walked into the courtyard, carrying a small satchel of food as usual. The dragon lay coiled near the fountain, eyes half closed, breathing steady. For weeks, Jason had slowly earned its trust. The palace staff had begun to follow his calm approach, and even the guards moved carefully, knowing the dragon could react at any moment. But today, a sense of unease hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Suddenly the alarm bells rang. The palace gates shook as a rival empire's soldiers attacked without warning. Smoke and chaos filled the courtyard. Servants screamed, clattering metal echoed through the halls, and the dragon roared in panic, thrashing its wings violently. Its massive tail smashed against stone walls, knocking over statues and crushing benches. Guards tried to restrain it, but the dragon was too powerful, too terrified. It lashed out, and for a moment, it seemed as though the entire courtyard would be destroyed. Jason froze for only a second. He had faced chaos before, but nothing like this. He could see the dragon's eyes, wide with fear, not anger. It was not trying to attack people maliciously, it was panicked, trapped, and desperate. Most would run. Most would panic. Jason did neither. He spoke softly, his voice carrying over the chaos. "It's okay," he said. "I'm here. Calm down. You are safe." Step by careful step he moved closer. The dragon's claws scraped the ground, sparks flying as stone cracked beneath its weight. It roared, flames curling from its nostrils, but Jason did not flinch. He extended a hand, steady and calm, showing no fear. The dragon stopped briefly, its massive head turning toward him. A tense silence fell over the courtyard as everyone watched, holding their breath. Jason spoke gently, repeating the same words over and over, soothing the dragon. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, it began to respond. Its tail stopped thrashing as violently, its wings folded slightly, and it blinked at him. Jason edged closer, staying low, moving slowly, careful not to trigger fear again. He placed a hand near its snout, letting the dragon smell him. Its hot breath ruffled his hair, but he stayed calm. The soldiers outside continued to attack, their shouts and clangs making the dragon tense again. It roared, but Jason remained patient, speaking softly. "I'm here. It's okay. You can trust me." The dragon's muscles relaxed fractionally. It seemed to understand that this man posed no threat, even in the middle of chaos. Jason knew that any sudden movement could undo all the trust he had built. He waited, breathing steadily, letting the dragon calm itself. Slowly, the dragon allowed Jason to guide it through the courtyard. Step by step, he moved ahead, keeping his voice low and reassuring. The creature followed, massive claws careful not to strike anyone. Guards stepped back, astonished and relieved. Servants peeked from behind walls, whispering in disbelief. No one had ever seen the dragon controlled in the middle of a palace attack. At one point, a soldier accidentally stumbled near the dragon, shouting in fear. The dragon flared its wings and hissed, ready to strike. Jason held up a hand and spoke firmly but calmly, his voice cutting through the panic. The dragon paused, nostrils flaring, then slowly relaxed. It had listened to him even in the worst moment it had ever faced. That trust, hard-earned over weeks, held strong. The courtyard was still chaotic, but the dragon now became a protector instead of a threat. Jason guided it toward the palace gates, where soldiers tried to breach the walls. The dragon roared loudly, flames curling from its mouth, sending the invaders into retreat. Its eyes flicked to Jason, and it nudged him gently as if to say it would follow his lead. For the first time, the creature's immense strength and fearsome presence worked for the palace, not against it. The emperor watched from his balcony, astonished. "This is incredible," he whispered. "The man has done what no one else could. He has calmed the dragon, even in the face of chaos." His advisors, mouths open in disbelief, could not deny what they saw. The dragon, once a symbol of fear and destruction, now moved with purpose under Jason's guidance, defending the palace instead of destroying it. Jason realized the truth of what had happened. The dragon's aggression had never been true malice, it was fear and pain. By remaining calm, patient, and steady, he had shown the creature that trust was possible, even in the worst moments. And that trust had turned the tide. The invaders were repelled, the courtyard saved, and the palace intact. When the last soldier fled, the dragon lay down, exhausted but calm. Jason knelt beside it, speaking softly and gently stroking its massive head. The creature nuzzled him, a gesture of trust and recognition. For weeks, he had built patience into understanding. Now that bond had saved countless lives. The palace staff, guards, and even the emperor slowly came closer, realizing that this man's courage and calmness had tamed the impossible. The dragon's eyes, once wild and full of fear, now followed Jason with attention and respect. It had survived terror, chaos, and danger, and it had chosen to trust him. Jason stood, looking down at the massive creature. "We made it," he said softly. "Together." The palace, once filled with panic and doubt, now felt a fragile peace. That night, the courtyard was quiet again. Jason sat beside the dragon, speaking in soft, calm tones. The creature rested its enormous head on the stone, eyes half closed, breathing steady. The emperor approached him carefully. "You have done something no one else could," he said. "You have not only tamed the dragon, but you have also taught us the value of patience, courage, and understanding." Jason only smiled. The crisis had tested both of them. It had been the ultimate challenge, a moment where fear and chaos could have destroyed everything. But Jason's patience, calmness, and empathy had turned that fear into trust, and that trust into action. The dragon, once feared and broken, had become a loyal protector. And Jason, the veteran single dad, had proven that courage and understanding could overcome even the greatest danger. For the first time, the palace felt safe in the dragon's presence. What had once been impossible was now real, a bond between man and beast that could face even the most terrifying crisis. And Jason knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would change the palace, and the dragon, forever. The courtyard was quiet in the early morning light. Smoke from the previous day's attack had cleared, and the palace walls stood strong. The dragon, once feared by all, now lay calmly near the fountain, its massive body relaxed. Its eyes followed Jason as he approached, curious and attentive. The bond between them, built over weeks of patience and careful care, had become strong and unbreakable. The impossible dragon was no longer wild, it was learning to trust. The emperor stepped into the courtyard, his long robes brushing the stone floor. He looked at Jason and the dragon with admiration and relief. "You have done what no one else could," he said, his voice echoing slightly. "Not only have you calmed the dragon, but you have also shown us what patience and understanding can do. You are its keeper now officially." Jason only nodded, smiling faintly. Titles and honors were not what mattered to him. What mattered was the trust he had earned and the peace that had returned to the palace. The palace staff, who had once whispered doubts and warnings, now moved carefully around the dragon, following Jason's lead. The guards walked with quiet confidence, knowing that the dragon would not attack if treated with respect. Even the servants, once terrified of every shadow, now observed calmly, watching the dragon as it stretched its massive wings or nudged Jason gently. Fear had been replaced by awe and respect. Jason spent his days continuing to strengthen the bond. He fed the dragon, brushed its scales, and spoke softly to it, never forcing it to act against its will. Slowly, the dragon began to respond more openly, following him from one courtyard to another, nudging his hand, even allowing a few playful gestures. For Jason, these small acts were victories. They proved that even the most fearsome creature could be guided with care, patience, and respect. The emperor, impressed by the transformation, invited Jason to advise on the palace's other challenges. "You have taught us a lesson," he said. "Not just about dragons but about leadership, patience, and courage. You understand something many of us have forgotten." Jason listened respectfully, but his thoughts were never far from the dragon beside him. He knew that trust was fragile and it could not be rushed. He had learned this with his daughter, and he had applied it to the creature before him. Word of Jason and the dragon spread beyond the palace walls. Other kingdoms and empires came to see the dragon that no trainer had lasted an hour with. They watched as the massive beast, once broken and wild, now moved with calm and focus under Jason's guidance. Some envied his skill. Others questioned it. But all could not deny the bond that had been created. A bond built not on fear or force, but on understanding, patience, and courage. One afternoon, Jason's daughter, Mia, arrived at the palace. Her eyes widened as she saw the dragon, its massive form gentle and curious as it watched her. She stepped carefully, her small hand outstretched. The dragon sniffed her fingers, then nudged her lightly, a gesture of trust. Jason smiled, watching the connection. "It can sense kindness," he whispered. "Just like we do." Mia giggled softly, walking around the courtyard as the dragon followed her cautiously, careful not to frighten her. Life in the palace began to change. The dragon became not only a protector but also a symbol. Children came to watch it, guards felt safer, and even the emperor found comfort in its presence. It was no longer a creature of fear, it had become a creature of inspiration. The palace walls, once filled with tension and worry, now resonated with a quiet strength. Jason's influence was clear, not only in taming the dragon but in teaching those around him how to face fear with patience and courage. One evening, as the sun set and cast golden light across the courtyard, Jason sat beside the dragon, speaking softly. Its massive head rested on his shoulder, scales warm under his hand. "We've come far," he said quietly. The dragon blinked slowly, almost as if it understood. Months ago it had been untouchable, aggressive, and full of fear. Now it allowed gentle touch, followed commands calmly, and even showed curiosity and affection. The bond between them had grown stronger than anyone could have imagined. The emperor visited that evening, standing quietly beside Jason. "You have given this palace more than safety," he said. "You have given us hope and a lesson in leadership. The dragon will forever be a symbol of what humans can achieve with courage and patience." Jason nodded, his thoughts on his daughter, the dragon, and the lessons he had learned. He had never sought fame or glory, only understanding, and now that understanding had created something lasting. Over the following weeks, Jason continued to work with the dragon. They trained together, exploring the palace grounds, testing the dragon's abilities and reinforcing trust. The creature learned to respond to soft commands, to defend the palace when needed, and even to playfully interact with those who approached with respect. Its once broken spirit now shone with intelligence and confidence, a reflection of the bond it shared with Jason. The palace staff adapted as well. They learned to approach the dragon calmly, to respect its space, and to follow Jason's guidance. Fear had been replaced with cooperation. The dragon's transformation had taught everyone a lesson, that patience, empathy, and understanding could overcome even the greatest challenges. Jason watched it all with quiet satisfaction, proud not only of what he had achieved but of what others had learned. One morning, the dragon nudged Jason toward the balcony where the Emperor stood. It roared softly, a sound of both power and loyalty. Jason smiled, understanding the message. Together, they were not only guardians of the palace but symbols of what humans could achieve when they faced fear with courage and understanding. The dragon, once impossible, had become a companion and protector, a living testament to patience, trust, and bravery. Jason knelt beside the dragon one last time that day, brushing its scales gently. "We've built something incredible," he said softly. "Not just for the palace but for all of us. We've shown that even the broken can become strong with trust, care, and courage." The dragon leaned into him, massive eyes calm and attentive. It was more than a pet now, it was family, friend, and protector. The palace, once filled with fear, now echoed with a quiet strength. The Emperor smiled, staff moved with respect and calm, and the dragon roamed freely, no longer wild but loyal and powerful. Jason looked at the creature beside him and felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The impossible had been achieved. A bond had been forged that would last a lifetime, a legacy of trust, courage, and understanding. And so, the dragon that no trainer had lasted an hour with became a legend, not because of fear or strength, but because of the patience, heart, and courage of a single man, a veteran and a father, who believed that even the wildest and most broken hearts could be healed with trust. The palace stood strong, the dragon calm, and Jason's story became one of hope, courage, and the unbreakable bond between human and beast. The impossible pet had found its home, and in doing so, Jason had shown the world the power of patience, understanding, and love.